Welcome to Let's Talk Tech with NVTC, a digital series exploring tech's most notable trends, new innovations, digital transformations, lean agile principles and mindsets, the future of work, and more. We'll introduce next-gen leaders from member companies of the Northern Virginia Technology Council and learn about the great impact they are making in our region. I'm your host, Phillip Naithram. Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Tech with NVTC. Today's episode will feature Merritt Group's Vice President of the Emerging Technology Group, Suzanne and Vice President of Digital, Pasha Irshad. And as always, we'll have our Did You Know segment at the end. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Accenture, American Systems, Consumer Technology Association, General Dynamics Information Technology, ICF, MITRE, TalkTech, Uninet, and our media partner, iHeartMedia. You can find all of our episodes on Wonk FM and the iHeartMedia app. Now, I'm excited to introduce today's speakers. From the Merritt Group, we're going to be discussing what marketers can expect from the Metaverse in 2022. Please help me welcome Suzanne and Pasha. Well, Suzanne, Pasha, welcome to Let's Talk Tech.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you both. But, before we begin, we like to do a little bit of an intro and kind of talk to you guys and learn a little bit about you. So, Suzanne, are you from the Northern Virginia area? How'd you find yourself at Merritt Group?
So I'm actually from Boston originally, went to school in Chicago, and then about a year after school in Chicago, moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area. And that is when I started working at Merritt Group several years after. So I've been at Merritt Group for 8 years, and I was working out in the San Francisco office. And I was there for 10 years. And then during the pandemic in 2020, actually relocated to Minneapolis. And that's where I am now.
Oh, wow. So you've been around quite a bit.
Yes, that's true. Truly coast to coast.
Yeah. What's your favorite place so far?
Oh, you can't ask me that. I loved the Bay Area while I was there, but it changed quite a bit. So where I am now in Minneapolis is delightful. Love the cost of living, access to nature. It's great.
I was going to say the outdoors and you get all four seasons, like true experience of all four seasons.
Yes, a lot of snow, quite a lot of snow, but yeah, getting used to it. Boston's my home, so I'll always kind of have a special place in my heart for that town.
Yeah. Red Sox fan?
Yes, definitely a Red Sox fan. Not as much a Patriots fan these days, but.
Oh, all right. What about you, Pasha? You from around Northern Virginia? Are you from somewhere else?
No, I was born in Amsterdam. My parents immigrated here, and I'm not going to give my age away, but we lived on the West Coast. We're in Cincinnati for a while and then settled in DC. So I've been in DC probably the last 30 years. Went to University of Maryland. Had an illustrious career in the restaurant industry before I found myself in the agency world. And I've been there for 15 years. And this is actually my second time at Merritt Group. Came here, helped them build out the creative services practice, and then came back to help them build the digital practice.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's a huge testament to Merritt. The fact that that you moved multiple locations, but you stayed with the company that you were with. So that means that they're doing something right. And then also this is your second time around. So there was something that brought you back, right? Because you could be doing this anywhere.
Yeah, it's a good atmosphere and a good group of people. So working towards a common objective. So I've definitely been around the bend, but it's a good place to be. So, and then
you said Cincy? Between Cincy and DC.
Yeah, I was there when I was little. So dad taught over there, but pretty much lifelong DC resident.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you guys today. I'm really, we hear a lot of information about the Metaverse, and it's new and Web 3.0. And to be honest, I don't know that I know a whole lot about it. So I'm really excited to learn from you guys and to hear more about it and what its possibilities are, what some of the challenges are, whether or not it's plausible. Myself running a startup and looking at what I'm doing going forward, is it something I should be considering, right? So it's going to help me, and I know everyone listening. So, and I guess that's probably a great place to start, right? What is Metaverse?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick us off there. So I know a lot of people are starting to describe the metaverse almost like a video game. Like I think a good example is that game Second Life, right? Where you have this, automated kind of virtual reality of a whole world. And so that includes virtual reality headsets and augmented reality headsets. I would say when we're switching to what is the metaverse today, it's definitely a shared virtual space, right? Where users are represented by virtual avatars. So that in, I think, a professional setting can be translated to, showing up as your own avatar, potentially in a meeting. You're having a meeting in the metaverse. And then maybe for happy hour, you're going bowling with that same team within the metaverse. So I want to just emphasize that it's not a simple application that you can download, right? Like off of an app store or just play at your own convenience. The metaverse, really does merge reality and the virtual world. This is where something like NFTs, which have been a huge topic of conversation, a huge news cycle within the last really 18 months, NFTs could be really valuable here. Because if you buy something like a digital print or you buy, a really nice piece of clothing in the digital space, that could then translate to your avatar within the metaverse. And it could be a good way to show your identity there.
And so, I was trying to relate it to something like Sims in the sense that there's a virtual world and you have an avatar. But you're saying that there's other layers on top of that. How would I get an avatar as the end user, someone who wants one?
Right. I mean, it really depends on, for lack of a better word, the portal in which you're entering the metaverse, right? So if you're entering the metaverse through, again, and there's not one metaverse right now, right? It's not like a video game that you tap into. Each organization is kind of going to have its own concept of the metaverse. And that will bring me into a topic I know we want to talk about today, which is all the technology that's needed to create the metaverse. But you could tap into your company's metaverse as an employee there. But then you could go home and hang out in a metaverse with your friends if you're all looking to, bowl or play a video game together.
All right. Well, so as let's say as a company, like I said, my own real life example, and probably many people that are listening to this now running companies are considering, what do we do about this? Do we need to build one? What does that even mean or encompass? What does it mean to build a metaverse for your company? What do you need to do?
So from a cultural perspective, I think you can think about it in terms of creating some type of, hybrid work environment, right? Where some employees may be in the same room, but your whole talent pool is global or even across several states. And so you're creating an environment where people can collaborate in kind of a different way. So again, you could all enter into a meeting room together. You could do an activity together. You could even brainstorm in a different creative way within the concept of the metaverse.
So that kind of drives me to another question. I feel like I'm asking a lot of questions, and hopefully through these questions, I think that's probably the best, since it's so new, the best way for us to really learn as much as we can. But I guess what I'm hearing you saying it's creating a culture, it's creating an environment, and that's value. That's value for a company. But what's the real value proposition for a company to create a metaverse for themselves versus not doing it? Is there, can they earn more business? Can they market themselves better? Pasha, what is this going to do going forward? And aside from creating a community, because I can already see that if we can take the expense that we would have spent in office space and invest it into something that would go further and be more durable and longer lasting, maybe that's the way we go. I don't know. That's value, but that doesn't help to earn more business or grow our company. Is there a different, and what am I missing? Why else would we do this?
Yeah. I think to take a step back and actually let me start with your example. Getting office space requires you just to show up to that office space, work with developers, get it set up, make it look nice. That is something that's in every organization's wheelhouse, and it's very easy to find a vendor to help you with that. If you're shifting your working environment to the metaverse, right, Web 3.0, virtual reality, that's not just a shift in actually your physical being, it's a shift in your complete organizational structure and understanding. So having the roadmap to, and I think you raise a great point, it's the why, right? And any, I think, marketing initiative is going to start with why. If you don't start with that why, you're not going to get where you need to go. With that, the pandemic and everything that's transpired since has really sped up what I would call digital transformation. I think employees, customers, prospects, in some ways, they all expect a digitized experience, an Amazon-like experience, an experience that's somewhat seamless. As we introduce the metaverse to an already crowded continuum of technology, I think there's obviously benefits to that. And I would see the benefits not being so much as related to, hey, I'm going to create a virtual workspace for my organization, but more so, how can we transform customer experiences, right? And I think that's where you start to see the larger organizations that have the wherewithal to really take advantage of the metaverse, the Nikes, the Disneys, the Guccis, right? These big consumer brands, really melding virtual reality and real life into these customer experiences that add value to their customers day to day. But what those organizations have that you might not have at a startup is they have large teams that spend their time understanding a lot of what Suzanne talked about, right? What's that technological infrastructure you need to build something? Who are the people that are going to run it, right? Because there's a human element to making sure everything goes well. The third, which we haven't talked about, but when you think of things like GDPR and you think of things like, the California Privacy Act, there's an element of data, right? And data security. As we move to the metaverse, there's an element of security just in interactions between avatars. So and there's an idea of governance, right? So how does that all really affect everything? So I would just say for an organization looking to, build the metaverse for their employees, why would you do that, right? If it's to offer a best-in-class experience on from a cultural standpoint, then that could make sense. But then you also need to make sure you have folks that can deliver on that promise. And that's the vendors that I talked about, right? I mean, it's kind of the wild, wild west right now in terms of building the metaverse. So do you have a trusted partner that can kind of help you organize that? As you roll it out, what's the governance, right? Like, how are you governing the people in the metaverse to ensure that there's some decorum? And that can go for an internal or an external event. And so when you tie all that together, you start to see, obviously, the benefits, right? Again, we've all moved from in-person events to virtual events. So if we could take that and transform that one other layer by offering that kind of virtual reality, right? Be it trade shows, be it demos for your clients. I mean, there's obviously a huge benefit there, but to get there, there needs to be that roadmap and there needs to be that shared sense of why we're doing this and how it's going to either achieve, objectives for your business or it's going to transform your customer experience.
Yes, Pasha's touching on a really interesting point around the metaverse and the technology that's required to build the metaverse. So ultimately, we're not there yet. I just want to be very, very clear, right? And in terms of actually the technology required to build the metaverse, there is no common data model right now that is governed across multiple organizations. So what Pasha was explaining, some of the big brands that are creating technologies and capabilities and applications for the metaverse, like Facebook for Meta, Epic Games, Apple, these are the giant technology companies that have the type of budget to play around with creating technologies to build something like this. So I want to just emphasize that at the moment, there are no open standards. There are no standards at all that are governing the ways that these different tech companies are creating technology for the metaverse. So what that means is right now, again, to touch on Pasha's point, it is kind of the wild, wild west in terms of development. So it's really the folks with the biggest budgets are going to win ultimately up front. And that is because there is so much technology that is required to build the metaverse. We have a client right now in my portfolio at Merritt Group called Synthesis AI. they build their synthetic data platform. So if we think about synthetic data, it's basically fake data, if you will. He would not love me using that description, but it's the use of data sets, 3D rendered images to, really expand large data sets almost overnight. So it's a very cost effective way to do that. So if you think about you or me entering the metaverse, either with our company or with our friends, we're walking down the street, we see stop signs, right? We see, storefronts. Those are all images that need to not only get rendered, but then need to be accommodating to you and me in the way that we're interacting with the stop sign, with the storefront, with the door that opens and closes. That requires an incredible amount of technology, not only for you and me to interact with that scene individually, but then when we are incorporating other people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people into that same scene, everyone's going to have a different experience. So the amount of technology that needs to be spun up, created, deployed, tested for us to experience a metaverse just like a happy hour at our work, we're not there, and we're not going to be there for a little while.
So yeah, I mean, that's, what is the technology that's required? Like, what do we need to be doing, or what are companies that size actually doing to create these? And then, another question that popped into my mind is, why not just go to the happy hour? Like, why do it in the metaverse? Why not just meet in real life? Or to the trade show example, why not just have a trade show? Why not just, like, we're creating, we're virtual now, and then we're creating another layer of virtual when we could just go do the in-person, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
At some point, someone's going to have to pull that string and say, why not do that and do this instead, right?
It's a super good question. So your first question first, right? What's the technology required?
Right. What do we need to do? It's this mountain, but made of what?
Exactly. So if you think about the amount of data, the amount of imagery that needs to be created, then the technology that needs to be tested, employed, and have us interact via voice, sound, color, all of that, and then we're thinking about both technology between B2B organizations, but then also for consumers as well. So that's when we get more into the headsets and the virtual reality sets and that kind of thing. Incredible amount of technology needs to be created before it's really achievable for you or me to just download and enter into a happy hour. I think when we are talking about why a happy hour in the metaverse, I think that gets, to be honest, a little bit more psychological, where I think a lot of people prefer to not leave their house, right? If you think about, would a group of friends, especially I would say in the teenage years right now, would they rather get together and play in the same room or go out and shoot a hoops? Or would they rather get together and play a video game from the comfort of their own home? I think we're appealing to similar types of personalities that just maybe don't enjoy that face-to-face interaction as much and are looking for either a safer experience from the comfort of their own home, or just a technologically new experience, right? I think the companies, to Pasha's earlier point, that are going to deploy something like this at first are going to be the ones that are most interested in experiencing new types of emerging technologies, will potentially use it as an opportunity to recruit and retain from a cultural perspective. So I think it's really just a type of person that's really interested in that type of experience.
Yeah, and I would say there's obviously generational. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when single player games were the focus of most video games, right? Now you have most video games leading with that kind of shared experience and, gaming together. As it relates to the technology, I mean, I think back to a time where everybody felt they needed to have a mobile app, right? Everybody wanted an app. They felt it was the thing to do. And so they started to build their apps. And then they realized for a native app on Apple and a native app on Android, there's a lot of work associated with it, right? You've got to stay up to date from a release perspective. You've got to update it when iOS makes an update. You have to update it for each of the individual platforms, be it OS or Android. You have to come out with a different iPad application. And now what you see is more organizations just using responsive web, right? I mean, the costs and the time didn't really map back to the costs incurred from a time perspective, a development perspective, for the ROI generated just wasn't there. And so when we think about the metaverse, I just think about other times where there's a hot button topic, and it used to be apps, and how that looks probably 10 years later, right? So I think organizations just need to, look at, you don't have to look at the distant past to get a sense of some of the pitfalls and just understand those, right? I mean, I think the happy hour analogy, or the question, is really, if everybody works at your organization in a similar space, there's probably not a lot of need for that. But if you're of a global organization, right, then there could be a need for that. And there could be culture building that occurs. And so again, the why is very important. And that's what I keep coming back to.
Yeah, well, let's pull the thread a little bit more on the why, right? Because at some point, culture building is important, and that gives you, social credibility within your company, and could be a reason or deciding factor in why someone chooses to work for your organization versus another. They're going to execute on work and tasks that's going to generate income for the business, and hopefully find fulfillment in what they're doing. So I can see that. But let's go back to the Disney, the Gucci, the Louis Vuitton, the people that, those are retailers. They obviously want to sell their products. Should they be looking forward? I think what I hear you saying is that over time, the opportunity to enter the metaverse will probably likely only get easier and more efficient as technology catches up. And just same way with apps, right? It used to cost you more than $1 million of a raise to go put together one iOS app. That doesn't say anything about the Android system or anything else. And, if it's not something that's a software as a service and it's only to support your business, how much more business did you actually get for that $1 million+ investment, right? I get that. But, what is, like, how, when companies implement this, aside from building a culture in their company, what else can it do for them, right? Or, I think there was some talk about even changing the way that, like, I don't like the AI generated tech support. I don't find it to be as helpful as it used to. Just, I have a question, I need that question answered. This looks like it could be a solution to that, and also be a line of business centered around that. Like, what are some of the other things forward thinking, Pasha?
I mean, if you look at a company like Best Buy, right, they've kind of transformed their digital transformation has been actually tapping into that online support, right? Like, that's where they doubled down on. They doubled down on in-store, they doubled down on out-of-store. If you look at an organization like that, the evolution of their kind of support, right, the way that they differentiate themselves from other big box tech retailers, could be the metaverse, right? Geek Squad could easily be you entering this virtual world where they're showing you in person how to set up your TV rather than sending people there. So again, I think for organizations like that, it can make a ton of sense, right? As a natural evolution of what you're doing, just using the customer support analogy. I look at things, obviously, because we work in B2B, from a B2B lens. And I would say, from a B2B lens, there are opportunities from, I think, demoing trade shows, but it's well known that B2B does usually run, behind B2C from a technology standpoint and adoption. I think that's probably caught up over the last few years. Again, the pandemic has transformed some of that. But obviously, like Suzanne mentioned, someone like Best Buy has a research and development budget, right? And they're able to kind of put in place the resources that they need to execute on this. Whereas a small to medium enterprise B2B company, I don't think there's that same budget, right, to put together the metaverse for demos, which may or may not increase pipeline velocity, right? You're staking a lot on an unknown. And so I think those are they're really just two different ways of looking at, B2C and what they could do, and B2B, right? And from there, I think it's upon the organization to, figure out if it's the way they want to move.
I think a good way to look at it could be the next wave of the way an organization is interacting with its customers, right? So the pandemic is a great example, right? We've seen a lot of brands struggle to connect with their customers, to keep sales up, to keep momentum up when brick and mortar stores are struggling. So Sephora is a great example. Sephora jumped on facial analysis technology, where you can go on their website as a customer and you can analyze the way that your face looks, the shades, the shapes, the colors, et cetera, and get makeup recommendations as a result, right? So the metaverse could be the next wave in that relationship with Sephora to its customers, where you could actually walk into a place within the metaverse and have some type of conversation, try things on, et cetera, et cetera. So I think companies that are really looking to push envelopes in the way that they're looking to evolve their brand, evolve their relationships with their customers, and push the limits of their own limitations, for lack of a better word, in terms of their sales, this could potentially be a good way to do it.
Yeah, and it sounds like from what you were saying before, like going forward, let's push that even further. Their avatar is going to have to wear some of that makeup in the,
right,
if they wanted it to, and that would be another purchase and point of sale that they would make and another revenue generator.
Exactly.
So if they start the process, let's call it now, of getting you used to doing this, it will be an easier sell to have you buy makeup for your avatar the way you would have worn it in real life later on. So that's something to think about. For the end user, though, what technology, when you say enter the metaverse, do I only need a headset or do I need something else as an individual?
That's kind of to be determined right now, because Meta, Apple, Amazon, all of these companies are in such early stages of building their own versions of the metaverse. I think what we're going to see is likely metaverse platforms that pop up. I actually love Pasha's example earlier of like the iPhone. I think the iPhone's a great example. It's something that you purchase, that you have specific applications within, and then developers can develop on top of the iPhone. And if you want a different type of experience, you might have to go to another phone company. I envision the future of the metaverse to be something like that, where you would approach Facebook's Meta, be able to accomplish some things within that kind of zone, but then partnerships, different development companies will have to feed into what they've already created, or you might have to go experience something completely different.
Right. And is it happening simultaneously that there are companies that, as the giants, right, the gorillas out there, the tech, not oligarchs, but the huge companies are doing a lot of the development? Are there people simultaneously looking at data security? Because we already have trouble with that now. Like you just mentioned, like you're giving an entire face print that's going to generate something. Who's to say that doesn't generate an avatar that isn't actually you? Like, how do you protect? Like, that's another layer of data security that we already have enough trouble right now. What I think would be equally I don't know, but the social impacts of, instead of going outside and playing with your friends as a teenager and getting to know how to interact with other human beings in real life and understand it, but doing that in the metaverse, what does that do for us as you continue to get older? Do you become better? Does it have no effect? Does it have some effect that we can say, well, that's kind of a thing, right?
Yeah, it is a thing. And like, to be quite frank, that gets way outside my personal area of expertise. There is already data that's coming out and research that's coming out that looks at teenagers, specifically ages like 12 to 18, that have experienced this pandemic, and the way that like that desocialization, that more virtual connection has stunted growth. So I think it's a question, right? I think it's a question, and I think it's probably something that's going to require, to your first kind of part of the question, compliance, governance, security measures, potentially initiatives like the Open Data Initiative is one of them that already exists, like actual organizations that are just meant to study and make sure that everything's being governed well, that people have, are being treated fairly, that there's not like bullying or anything going on in these types of virtual environments. All of those initiatives will have to be created to make sure that it's a productive experience for everybody.
Yeah. Well, one last question for you, Pasha. In terms of, what do you think? So when I'm intaking all this information and like light bulbs are going off, and we talked about buildings and stop signs, and we have contractors that do all those things in real life. would we have a digital version of, I guess, developers that are building buildings and architects designing? Do you see in terms of business and marketability of companies that being part of the trajectory there?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely organizations right now that can help you get set up in the metaverse, right? And they're really working to assist early adopters. And then I think you've got, and I would just call those like boutique agencies focused on the metaverse. And then you've got what I would just say are your big box agencies, which I think pretty much all of them have been moving to that digital experience mindset over the last 3 to 5 years, right? So again, I talk about natural evolutions. This is just another natural evolution, and understanding that and really trying to find the benefit for your customer base. And so, within that, the answer is yes. And I would say as this becomes more ingrained in the lexicon and it spreads and some time goes by, I would see, even agencies like Merritt Group having, that kind of experiential, metaverse maybe department. But you've got to focus on the need at hand versus down the road.
Yeah, and it sounds like, at least Suzanne, there's a lot that's up in the air as far as, you guys called it the Wild Wild West as far as technology. I mean, maybe you don't just buy the one headset, you buy a headset for each different types of experiences you have, or someone comes along over time with the universal headset. I'm thinking like the remote control. Back in the day, you had a different remote control for everything in your house, your stereo, your TV, the other stuff. And then eventually we had a universal where you can use it for everything. The phones, like even now you can, like Windows works on both, every platform kind of thing. You can get Excel on your iPhone. I remember back when, maybe that's showing my age, Pasha, but I remember when you had Excel on your PC, and then Windows didn't have that. They had something like it. I don't know. Well, guys, listen, I think this has been huge, or it's been a great experience to just take in a lot of this information. I know that I have a lot of questions, maybe, a huge lack of understanding, right? But you guys have been super helpful with that. So thank you so much for joining us with Let's Talk Tech.
Great, thanks.
Before we go, let's talk about Did You Know? Did you know? According to Bloomberg, the global metaverse revenue opportunity could approach $800 billion in 2024 versus about $500 billion in 2020. In a survey conducted by YouGov, 36% of US consumers are interested in participating in the metaverse. Respondents ages 18 to 29 led the way with 51% showing interest, followed by those 30 to 44 at 43%, and those 45 to 64 years old at 32%. Only 19% of respondents over the age of 65 were interested. Facebook recently invested $50 million in nonprofit funding groups to help develop the metaverse responsibly. However, in reality, it agrees that the real metaverse idea will take another 10 to 15 years to become alive. We hope you've enjoyed today's program, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Visit nvtc.org for more information.
We look forward to seeing you at next month's Let's Talk Tech with NVTC. In the meantime, follow us at Nova Tech Council on Twitter and LinkedIn, and remember to sign up for the latest tech news at nvtc.org.